I call to order the Waverly City Council for August 28th, 2017. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as distributed by our city clerk, Carla Geyer?
Move approval of the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion seconded. Council discussion. All in favor signify with yes.
Yes.
Opposed with no. Becomes our official agenda. Guest council person, Mr. Steve Egley. Town renowned person.
Is that in a good sense?
And ex-magistrate. We got that straight. Steve, any opening comments on your part as you enter your third and last guest council appearance for?
It's been a pleasure to be here. It's been interesting, and thanks for having me.
Great to have you. At this time, I would entertain any comments by the public on any items not on tonight's agenda. Then we'll get to work. Study session. Item number 1 is our Planning and Zoning Commission's update to the City Council. Chairperson for Planning and Zoning is Mr. Hank Bagelman, and very important commission. Very privileged to have you lead it and privileged to have you present.
Well, it's good to be here. I'm delighted to be here and to have the privilege of chairing the Waverly's Planning and Zoning Commission. The commission, as you know, has 9 members appointed by the mayor with the concurrence of City Council for 5-year renewable terms. Additionally, Edie Wallstein, a member of the City Council, serves as our liaison. She's a former P&Z member. We also have Community Development Director Bill Werger and Ben Cohout, the Commission Secretary, and also the Community Development and Zoning Specialist on board. So it's a pretty together team. Our current members include Kate Payne. She's our vice chair. She's an architect with InVision. Richard Dane, a financial advisor and manager of the Eagle Financial Group. Mary French, a retired architect. Lance Gritters, an attorney with Leslie Collins and Gritters. Alan Hagensick, he's a private entrepreneur. His business is household cleaning. Dave Huser, an executive VP with First National Bank. Kathy Olson, the former director of human resources at CUNA Mutual, HR consultant of Wartburg College, and a former at-large city council member. And Heidi Solheim, the director of community relations at the Waverly Health Center. So it's an interesting collective of people. I'm so very proud of them because they show up, they speak their minds, they're not reluctant to have split votes. And during the 2016-2017 year, we conducted 10 formal work sessions in addition to multiple task group meetings and training events. Our quorum requirement is 5 attendees, or 56+% of the total group. Our attendance actually is something over 88% for the year. Planning and Zoning is a recommending body. It is not a legislative body, and as such, our public hearings tend to go a bit deeper with citizens in order to sort out the variety of points of view on any given topic, hopefully to the benefit of City Council. Waverly's vision statement is to create a community that embraces its assets, improves upon its weaknesses, strives to provide an environment that is sustainable and is forward-thinking while maintaining consistency with the financial capability of the community. Now, between us, 34 words is about 24 more words than anyone will ever remember. But that doesn't change the fact that it's our city's vision statement that tells our Planning and Zoning Commission where we are going. The challenge to Planning and Zoning is to embrace the spirit of that vision statement and to visualize a Waverly beyond today into a future that may be 50 years ahead of us. 50 years seems like a long time until we examine the evidence and evolution of the Cedar River Parkway. That plan has been thought of as a bypass since the 1960s, and it is only now emerging as an active and much-needed corridor. So keeping a long view is an important characteristic for this commission. Planning and zoning in Iowa is authorized by state law. For the city, it's Chapter 414 of the Iowa Code. In 2010, the state of Iowa introduced smart planning legislation into the planning process. That's found in Chapter 18B of the Iowa Code. So that's incorporated into how we have to conduct our business. In 2011, the city of Waverly incorporated the smart planning principles into our comprehensive land use plan. A couple of definitions. For planning and zoning, a plan is a policy statement. A zoning ordinance is law. A plan directs future land use. An ordinance regulates land use today. So you may ask, well, why so much emphasis on the comprehensive land use plan? The answer is simple. According to state law, the zoning ordinance and zoning decisions, quote, shall be made in accordance with a comprehensive plan, close quote. So it's required by our state to have a plan, and it's a process that we take very seriously. That comp plan has, in fact, become a living vision for our city. The comp plan lets citizens and business leaders know where we are going, and it tells prospective citizens and business folks how they might fit their future into ours. Comp plan analyzes and assesses land use, agricultural and natural resources, public infrastructure and utilities, transportation, economic development, housing, community facilities, community character. In brief, the comp plan is intended to protect and optimize property values and to provide continuity across time. Once a year, members of our commission have the opportunity to attend a statewide training event known as Workshops for Local Officials. The training is offered by the Iowa State University Extension Service. Elected leaders such as yourselves, city staff, Board of Adjustment, planning and zoning members are invited to participate. It's like P&Z 101. Every year, our instructor, Professor Gary Taylor, will ask the attendees about the status of the represented city comp plans at these meetings. And I will tell you, Waverly is always at the top of the charts. Historically, every 5 years, Waverly's Planning and Zoning Commission had delivered a full-scale comprehensive land use plan. The process takes more than a year to complete, with multiple citizen task groups involving more than 100 citizens and many, many meetings. Some of you have participated in the past. We enjoy a contractual relationship with Intercog. They provide expert guidance throughout the process in addition to countless hours from City of Waverly staff. Additionally, we tap the resources and know-how of kindred commissions, especially economic development and leisure services. The comp plan is a statement of policy. Every time a zoning application is considered, the comp plan is referenced. Whether it is a new project or the revision to some existing condition. The comp plan is developed by Planning and Zoning Commission and then is forwarded to City Council for your consideration, accompanied with a recommendation for adoption. In 2010-2011, we questioned the cost-benefit of continuing the 5-year cycle for a full-scale comprehensive land use plan. And after a lengthy debate, we agreed to move to a 10-year cycle. This has the added advantage of coinciding with the 10-year cycle of the United States Census Bureau. Additionally, we also agreed that at the midpoint of the new 10-year cycle, we would conduct a management review just to see how we're doing and to make adjustments as appropriate. We updated the plan this past, we delivered it to you this spring, so you had a chance to see what those changes were. Here are some highlights from 2016, 2017. Our management review for the comp plan occupied the commission from the fall through the spring, plus lots of task group meetings. We updated the residential zoning districts in order to find ways of providing more predictable development within those districts. We reviewed an application to change a planned development in South Waverly. We examined a request for the voluntary annexation of 39 acres in the quadrant northwest of the city. We considered an opportunity to host the state firefighters and their need to provide approximately 1,500 campsites for an event to be held in Waverly in 2018. And we've reviewed the request for a special provisional use to allow residential usage at the former CUNA offices on First Avenue Southeast. And occasionally we receive a request from Bremer County for a review and comment for a particular property use located within 2 miles of our city limits. That's a healthy relationship between the county and the city, and it deserves to be continued. That's a relatively brief overview. If you have time, I'd invite your questions.
Just a quick question. A year or so ago, the number of members on the group had been expanded. Has that helped you spend time, I guess, on the task force, kind of break things up and make some headway? Or
I think the benefit has been we have a more diverse commission. When we have a vacancy, we try to come up with names of people that might be people that would bring something to the table. I have conversations with the mayor about that. He has other people too that he's considering for those jobs. But I think it's made us a more diverse commission in terms of helping with, or just, if you take 5 out of 9 or 4 out of 7, it's a fractional part of a percentage point. So it doesn't help that way. But I think it makes us a more diverse commission.
I just know there was discussion when we went that direction just to allow subgroups, the subcommittees, to maybe focus on bits and pieces of the plan versus...
Which is what happened with the comp plan this past year. And we had quite a few of those task group meetings. Any others?
I was just going to say, I spent several years as liaison with the Planning and Zoning Commission, and I appreciate the work that you do, and particularly with the comp plan. I was involved with that in, was that 2010?
Would have been 2010 and 11.
That, and so having a revision of it or an update to it was nice, and go through it again in a few years and do a bigger look at it.
The next one comes up 2020, 2021, and you see the results of it on the wall behind you. It gives us a sense of direction as a community, and the deal there is to get the involvement of the community, not just the commission, but the community in the planning process, and that works.
Is there anything you could use from council as I see planning and zoning as would be an integral part of really city planning and how we look. Is there anything that you could benefit from council involvement, or is there anything that we can do to help you? Or
I'd like you to come to a meeting occasionally.
Okay, yeah, watch my
because
TV
I think
and
it gives you a first hand. I know your meeting, your meeting schedule is about as busy as they get, but to see it there is helpful.
I think before you go that we need to thank Joe. Yeah, as you know, Hank's got a phenomenal wife who let him out of his let him out of their home on his birthday to come make this report. Happy birthday, Hank.
That's all. Take good care. Thank you.
Study session, item number 2 is our Library Board of Trustees update to the City Council. Sarah.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to be presenting the information tonight. I have a couple of my board members here with me. Diana Blake and Elaine Main are here. I have a few handouts. I decided that it was just too much information to flash up on a screen. And since I'm going to try to be, here's another one, Bill. There's enough for staff too.
Bill, right next to you.
Oh, need one more. So since I'll be quick about this, then you'll have some more information to dig into later. So primarily looking back at the 16-17 year for the library, I thought I would start out by talking about the building itself and technology. Of course, we've had the Bremer Avenue project, the DOT road project, run by the library these past few months. And today was the first time I noticed that we have new sidewalk installed, so that's wonderful. Looking at the traffic numbers for the summer just recently, I realized that for the months of June, July, and August, we actually had 1,700 more bodies in the library during that same period of time for the previous year. So I would conclude that the road project didn't affect our numbers very much. And we had the summer reading program, which drew a lot of people too, but that was really, really wonderful. We felt like people found us, so that was good. A project coming up for us right now after Labor Day is the cementing of certain portions of our parking lot, which you may remember that we talked about last budget season, but that will begin and take a couple of weeks to be finished. A big change that we just made in the last couple of weeks, again, which we'd been talking about for quite some time, was our server that would be our library information system, contains all the patron data and item data. We just transferred that over, so it's no longer a server in the building, but it is a server that lives in a server farm with our Cersei Dynex company somewhere. So that has a number of benefits for us in that we don't need to have a backup server when we do upgrades. All of the upkeep of the server belongs to the experts who run those kinds of things all the time. It will free up our network administrator to be doing other things that we need him to do. So, so far, due to his good planning, I really think the process has gone very smoothly. We've got a couple, I wanted to mention for anyone listening that if you're having trouble logging on to your library account online as you did before, it may be now that you'll have to go to the library's website to get the adjusted URL for our catalog, because that URL is a little bit different now. You can still log into your account, but you'll just need to find the URL for the catalog again. And if you have any trouble, call. All right, next I wanted to talk about staff a little bit. We had a number of pretty big transitions, really, this past year. And one was that when we had an opening in our part-time librarian staff, we decided to go ahead with something that we'd been talking about for a while on the Personnel and Policies Committee as well, and that was to create a new job description for a position that would be between the pages or the shelvers and the librarians. So we called that position circulation clerk, and we were able to do a budget neutral rearrangement of staff so that we have basically a clerk on duty every hour the library is open, which then frees up librarians to step away from the desk to help patrons or even step out of the building to do more outreach. So that has been working out really well so far, and we were very fortunate. We've got some very fine people working for us in that clerk position. We also just very recently here, working with a couple of the other directors here, we hired a new building supervisor for the library and the fire station and the civic center and the public works building, as Brad Bierman moved on to a similar position at the West Des Moines School District. So he had been with us for more than 20 years and the whole life of the library building. So that's been a big transition, but Shane Potus is our new building supervisor, and he's going to be absolutely outstanding, so very happy about that. One of our part-time librarians started the Master of Library and Information Science program at the University of Iowa just recently, so she will be the 4th librarian currently on staff to be working on that degree, which we're very pleased about. And we brought 2 new board members on board, which you're well aware of because you appointed them, but we, Laura Freyking and Eric Leong, we sadly sent off to other communities, but Aaron Jones and Andrew Kaler have been wonderful additions to our board, and I think they're very well acclimated already at this point, so that's good. So as I've mentioned before, we've been trying to do more outreach. A couple of the things that we've got, you may have seen the library's ad at the Waverly Theater. When you've seen a movie, we have an ad that's going to be changing monthly, but it will run the whole year long. And it was, I was trying to remember, it was the state Enrich Iowa funding that paid for that ad for us. And what we wanted to help promote the Every Child Ready to Read program, which is a national push to encourage parents and caregivers of young people to interact with them and talk to them and read to them. So we decided that ad might reach an audience that there'd be some overlap, but it might reach an audience that would expand our message. We also, Chris Fagery is doing, who's one of our librarians, is doing a monthly radio show on K-Way. She said it's the 3rd Thursday at 8:30 a.m., so just to talk about things that are going on at the library. Chris Fagery has been very involved with the Bremer County Community Partners, and out of that work with that group have come some opportunities for us to share the Every Child Ready to Read workshops. We've done a workshop at Head Start. She's been asked to work with Big Brothers Big Sisters, and also Pathways and the United Way on some workshops and just information for their clients and people they work with about what the library has to offer. So again, we're really happy about that opportunity to work with other groups. We had a second summer of working with the summer feeding program at Southeast Elementary. This year, I think, in addition to a book that she always shares as part of the program, Chris shared our STEAM program that we were doing for kids at the library during the summer. So that takes the science, technology, engineering, math component that is being emphasized very much and adds the art element to it. And she would do little workshops, mini workshops for the kids at the feeding program. So I think that was very well received, and we hope that that program will continue to grow and that we'll be involved in that next year as well. Lastly, under outreach is that we partnered with the Leisure Services Department to consult with the Inclusion Connection, which is an organization that works with groups to talk about folks that have various kinds of disabilities and how you can pattern your publicity and your programs to make them feel welcome and make sure that programs are fully accessible to those folks. So we've had one workshop and hope to continue that conversation. It's been very, very good. So a little bit about our programs. This is one of your handouts that I gave you, and I won't go through it in great detail, but what you have in this, the 2017 recap. So the theme for the summer reading program this year was Build a Better World, and that's a National American Library Association theme that we plug into. Your first page talks about the children's portion of the summer reading program, and you'll see all kinds of pictures there. Little boy reading to one of the retrieving freedom dogs, kids building with boxes, which is amazingly fun. You forget how fun that is. We had a magician come, all kinds of events. And we really want to make sure and thank the businesses that donated to the summer reading program and our friends group, who every year gives a great deal of support so that we can bring in our Wednesday entertainers that help draw kids into the library. So there were 584 children age 0 to grade 5 who signed up for the program, where they're encouraged to read books throughout the summer, kind of keep their reading skills sharp. And the total attendance at those programs was just under 5,000. So busy summer again, very, very similar to past summers. The second page there is the summary for the teen program. They just did some very interesting, fun events as well. There are 190 kids registered for that program, 190 teenagers. The vast majority of those tend to be in the junior high, early high school age, and collectively they read 868 books this summer. You can read down the list of programs, but one that I wanted to point out was this network Nirvana. There's a young man from Cedar Falls who started his own business. He's got Minecraft, the game Minecraft, on a server, which he has created his own intricate world in. And so the library pays him to bring in his server, and all the kids at that event get to connect into that world and explore things in the world that he's created. And they were so enthusiastic. They hated it when the program ended, and so we know that we're going to have him back probably sooner than next summer. But a lot of very enthusiastic kids there. And the final page is kind of a summary of the adult summer reading program. They had a number of fun events going on. I think there are a number of adults that just like to be challenged in the same way, challenged to read something different, learn something new, and keep that going throughout the summer. Through the rest of the year, for adults and families, we have the do-it-yourself programs where they can come once a month and learn a new skill. So some of the summer ones were along that line. We also do once a month, regularly throughout the year, trivia night, because that's been so popular with adults. So that's the summer update. And other programs that I maybe haven't touched on as far as new and interesting, we did a very successful solar eclipse program, which is kind of a once in a blue moon kind of program, and once in an eclipse kind of program. I wasn't able to be there that day, but I think we had between 200 and 300 people. I'm not sure if, are you laughing at me? Okay.
So it's me.
Okay. Turning my page over here. There was a new program that we rolled out this year for middle school students called 50 Books, 50 States reading program, where they could choose a book that was set in a certain state and then read it and check that off their list and see if they could get to all 50, learn something about every state in the process. The Harry Potter program was wildly successful. They got to come and mix up potions with all the various potions on the table, and they just had a really good time reenacting and dressing up, and that will be a repeat for sure. One that I didn't want to forget to mention is our Cedar River Readers. This is a group of, well, actually, I think Steve is part of this group. So I'll put a little plug in. In the last 1 year, my understanding is that the Cedar River Readers, which is a choral reading group, kind of organized through the library, has had an audience of over 1,000 people this year. They get asked in by different groups, by school classes, and they can perform a number of different stories through choral reading, which is wonderful for our literacy objectives, and I think they've been having a good time. So let's see. And then Tech Fridays is a new thing that we've started. This is the last program I'm going to mention, but this is our librarians making themselves available 2 Friday mornings a month. So the second and third Friday mornings every month at 9 o'clock. Folks can come in early and bring their device and any questions that they have, because sometimes that help that we give people on a daily basis can be so individualized that they just need that one-on-one attention to kind of get over the hump that they're trying to get through. So that's a program that we've gotten started, not to be confused with the front page on the other handout that you have that is in regard to our upcoming Bremer County Library Association technology programs that are starting this fall. As a group of libraries, the 7 libraries in Bremer County, we were able to convince the supervisors to take a $5,000 risk on us and let us pay teachers to teach these technology classes all throughout the county. And we're trying to get these classes available to more people out in the county, knowing that some of the folks who live in these communities, some of them may travel here and there, but others might like to stay closer to home. And this is a program that's been going over at Denver Public Library really well. So you'll see that there are 3 classes offered at Waverly this fall. Anyone, county or city, can sign up for any of the classes. The full list is on the back of that page, and all you have to do is call the library that is the site for that class to register. So we're very excited about that. We hope that the turnout is really, really good for that. All right, and lastly, to talk about budget, that we talked about this at our board meeting, that we were very pleased again that in the 16-17 fiscal year, the library was able to return $25,000 to the city's general fund. About half of that was in personnel, and another big portion of that was because we were able to hold utilities to only 70% of what we budgeted. And I wanted to say a little bit about that because I think I would chalk up at least some of that difference in utilities to our energy efficiency program, which we've been working on for a couple of seasons now. But I know that where we're at the library now is that we have replaced fluorescents in the south wing and the west wing and the north wing of the library, and also now the very high ceiling lights. Next will be staff areas and some of the other hanging lights. So in the beginning, our energy consultant said that those kinds of changes to LED might make a $3,000 a year difference for us. And I think that's come a long way. The utility bill in 16-17 was the lowest utility bill by far that we've had in the last 8 years. So I think we're having an effect there. I wanted to say a few words about outside funding. The funding that we received from the state, Enrich Iowa funding, which is hopefully we get to continue that funding stream as things are talked about. The state library that passes that on to us, and at the federal level too, the LSTA funds have been dwindling. But we hope to keep this funding stream. This year, we were able to spend $5,000 of that on books, both print and electronic. The total that we had to spend was about $11,000. We replaced a water fountain that, we're 19 years into the building now, some new shelving, and a blackout curtain for the meeting room. So some just really good things, useful things to do with state money. I mentioned the Friends as one of our outside sources. Also our foundation, the Waverly Public Library Foundation. There's a portion of those funds that we spend about $4,000 a year out of on what we call special projects. And in the past year, they helped fund the water feature on the west side of the library, which is finished, and all that is replanted now. Looks beautiful. A book repair machine, our consult with Inclusion Connection, and early literacy backpack kits. The newest funding out of special projects is for a program called Great Discussions, and we're very excited about this. This is a new idea that came from one of our librarians, and it's a project of the Foreign Policy Association, America's largest discussion program in world affairs. They select important and pressing foreign policy issues to be discussed, and groups all over the U.S. meet to learn about and debate them. So that looks to be a great program. That'll be starting up this fall. Then also we want to continue to grow our Waverly Public Library Endowment, which is housed with the Community Foundation of Northeast Iowa. I just read today that the Endow Iowa tax credits have run out for 2017, but that is the great benefit of part of our foundation funds being part of the Community Foundation is that potential donors could receive those Endow Iowa 25% tax credits. All right, and I think aside from the Bremer County classes, the next couple pages there just show you other events that are coming up at the library in September and October. We have a big author fair. September, it's Saturday, the 16th of September, and I hear that there are now 45 authors who have committed to coming. They're each going to have a table. They each are allowed to sell their books. Most of them are local to some extent, but some may, come from a little bit farther away. But we're really hoping to get a lot of folks out to talk to them and look at their books and just have a chance to interact with them. There's another author coming Thursday, September 28th, and it's about being a veterinarian and people and their pets. And then the other big one is on Saturday, October 14th, where we are lucky, again, to get the author of the All Iowa Reads book for this year, which is Bottomland. So the author is Michelle Hoover. She will be here in person, and we're one of just a few Iowa libraries that's going to get to have her. Her book is about the feelings about Germans in post-World War I Iowa, basically. It takes place in Iowa. So that's a big part of the book. So anxious to have that discussion. That's about all for my update.
That was huge, and that was wonderful.
Yeah.
We'll hold our applause until after the discussion. Any questions here? I don't have to wonder whether you're booming or not. Goodness gracious. I thought
Yeah,
the summer
there's a
would
lot
be
going
a
on.
wound in terms of people finding you, and that wasn't the case.
Yep.
Who your creative talent is to come up with all these programs, but I hear a lot of, my wife does in-home childcare, so she talks to her kids throughout the summer, and
Yes.
they're always telling about what they just did at the library. And I know there's some big kids from the fire department that really enjoyed the big equipment night.
Good,
and that
yes,
type
yes.
of thing, so.
That was part of our summer reading program, was the big equipment night so our a number of our firemen were there showing off the fire truck to the kids who thought that was amazing. Miller True Value came and gave rides to kids. It was a good night. A lot of people.
Good. Any other?
Best kept secret in town, but it doesn't look like it's that much of a secret.
The secret is out. We got Sarah. Thank you. Super. Study session item number 3 is our Historic Preservation Commission update for the City Council. Mr. Don.
Thank you very much for having me tonight. Thank you for putting me after Sarah. She's a hard act to follow. Congratulations, all the wonderful work you've done. But seriously, thanks for this opportunity to bring an update on behalf of the Waverly Historic Preservation Commission. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Our commissioners are a dedicated and passionate group of people who get things done. And so it's a privilege to serve with them. Our current members are Karen Lehman and Linda Hovden, both of whom are here with me tonight, along with Chris Brunkhorst, Pete Newell, Mary Meyer, and Glenn Fenneman. And thanks to Councilman Dan Lampe for serving as our council liaison as well. We do want to say a special thank you to a couple of commissioners who have left the commission since our last update, and so we want to thank Deborah Ackerson and Tom Hicks for their years of service on the commission. Just a couple of highlights from this past year. Our biggest event of the year was the July 15th celebration of our Southwest Sturtevant Historic District, which was our 4th historic district, our 4th celebration. Walking tours were available. We had a lot of people take part in those. And then we held a special program that packed the basement of First Baptist Church. We want to thank Mayor Infelt for his remarks for that program. I want to thank Councilman Mike Shearer for attending. I want to thank our sponsors for that event, Fairway, K-Way Radio, and Rod and Bonnie Drenkow. And we want to thank First Baptist Church, who went out of their way to host our event. We awarded a plaque during that program honoring the placement of First Baptist Church on the Waverly Historic District. And we gave a Waverly Historic Preservation Award to Scott and Sherry Niles for the preservation work they've done on their home. We also want to comment on the completion of the nomination of the Green Bridge to the National Historic Register. We first want to thank the council and the city staff for their help in completing that nomination. But some may wonder why we're placing it on the National Register if the bridge is going to come down. Well, we wanted to point out the main purpose of any National Register nomination is to create a permanent record, a permanent file that documents the history of that structure. And it served our community for 100 years, so we want to remember that. And so this way we will always have a permanent record on file at both the State Historical Society office and with the National Park Service. We're also exploring if it makes sense to save a piece or two of the bridge to display it somewhere, which would go along with our display that highlights its placement on the National Register. We don't have any recommendation on that tonight, but we have been talking about that. Our commission has also made progress on providing information on our website for homeowners and property owners in our 4 historic districts. We want to clarify what they can and cannot do with those properties and the tax advantages that are available to them. That's a service we want to provide to the city and to our Waverly citizens. We also gave input on the future development of Riverside Park, working with Tab Ray. We look forward to what develops there. And finally, we're looking into grant funding for a project that would bring our historic districts full circle. The only section of town without a historic district is the northeast quarter. And so we would need to raise funding to hire an architectural historian to do a survey and see if there are enough contributing properties to carry a nomination forward. So it's an idea we're pursuing. We're not exactly sure yet when and if that might materialize, but there might be more coming on that. So that's our update. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
The tour was phenomenal.
Great, thanks. Glad you could be a part of
I
it.
think Southwest has never looked any better. I know, having spent some growing up time there too. And but what this does to a community to really coordinate itself, to present itself in order to lift up that past as we kind of get momentum to the future, is just outstanding. My goodness, and there's so many homes that. For Waverly, is it worth taking a little car tour? Yes, it is, just to go up and down and look at each of these homes and what's happened. So you're creating momentum for our town. We thank you.
Mm-hmm. And we have the walking tour brochures available, I think, both at the chamber office and at the library. For anybody who can do a self-guided walking tour using the maps in those brochures at any time. So we encourage you all to do that if you haven't done that.
Okay.
Don, as you and I have talked, I'm on the Chamber Design Committee, which we therefore have a particular interest in the commercial districts that have been added to the registry. We've talked about the significance of the tax credits that are available because of that, and what a boon that is, a booster for possible renovations and economic activity in those areas, and that we want to work. We're joined with Don as far as our chamber committee to make sure that we can get the word out and make that a tool. I noticed recently that Cedar Falls has come on this and had a meeting not long ago to talk to their chamber members and the public about wanting to establish those districts down there, realizing the significance that those have. And I just would like to make sure that we're all aware that this is a very significant thing that we were able to do largely because one of the good outcomes of the flood, that the research and effort that went into being able to create those districts was largely a FEMA-funded thing, and it was very hard to do. I encouraged Cedar Falls in its efforts, but they're in for a task to get that groundwork laid, and we have it in place, and we shouldn't forget it in any of our thinking about what we want to do to our Main Street corridor and throughout the historic districts, the residential areas as well. But it's a big deal.
Right. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I guess I want to say I appreciate what you do, and it's evident when you drive around town. We've been really trying to ride bikes more. I think it's to get me out there, but we've been spending a lot more time on the streets, riding around, and you see the signs. Our kids have noticed it, and it's really neat to ride around town and to see that. It puts a different different feel when you're going through town when you see it. Oh, I'm entering a historic district. That's neat. So.
Yeah.
And it comes with a lot of work, and appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Study session item number 4 is the one-year review of our downtown parking ordinance. I know either James or Bill could do this. Do you want to do it?
Yes, sir. We've been talking to staff, and a couple years ago there was discussion on looking at available parking issues at the time that had snow removal and just making sure that we stayed on top of that. I believe a year ago it was reviewed as well, and we decided to leave things as they were with the start of the upper apartments being rented, which I believe they're full completely now, and wanted to kind of measure the impact that would have on parking downtown. And so far, I've not heard any negatives on that as well. So one more time, staff wanted to bring this forward. We think this may be the last time we review it, unless something really would happen. But we just wanted to bring that forward to see if there's any comments council had or any discussion you'd like to have on it. But so far, so good with the addition of downtown parking and the snow events we've had in the past. Things seem to be working just fine. We'll be curious in the next year or so when CUNA gets brought on, starting in January, and that gets finished, if that will have any impact on parking, though they should have ample parking down there. And of course, we hope to still do something with the parking lot adjacent to State Bank as well. So I guess with that brief introduction, if there's any comments from council, we'd love to hear them. So.
And on duos, right? Yeah. Council? Sum and substance, you're fairly satisfied by this last year that we made a fairly good decision?
Yes, sir. I think everything's been going smooth. We haven't had any serious complaints about any kind of parking issues other than, of course, the construction. There's always issues with that. But overall, the influx of people into the downtown apartments has not been an issue that we thought it could have been. And so it's been very productive. And again, we would like to just table this until future meetings if we need to bring it back at all, unless something occurs.
That makes a lot of sense to, I have not heard anything about that, about issues with it. So, yeah, it kind of becomes one of those items that I think until people start seeing an issue or having an issue with it, I don't think there's a reason to keep looking back over it.
Okay.
You're good.
Carla, do you have anything?
I was just going to add that it was nice over the past year when the downtown apartments started filling up that the landlords actually stopped in to find out what the parking arrangements were. And so they were able to tell their tenants as they were moving in. So I think that really helped.
Yes. Sounds good. Study session item number 5 is round 1 discussion by the City Council on the state's new fireworks law. First, just a compliment. I don't know who this goes to, but this is a wonderful packet for the council. Now, the public is going to be brought up to date, as you'll see from our background information, but this was really thorough, and I don't know if I always wanted to know this much about Spencer and Clive and Pella, but they got their full, and they all came at it uniquely. But we have the advantage of that, but thanks for the packet. But
Something I was going to say that as we went through this, that you can go read through them and see the summary, and I don't know who did this.
It was staff out of the administrative office, Valerie and Carla. And the reason we brought all this together, it is a lot to read and look at, is to show you that there is no right or wrong. There is a wide variety of everything from full banning of all fireworks to staying with what the state has done to everything in between. So truly we want to just start the conversation, get some feel for where council sits on it personally or anything they've heard, whether it be complaints or issues, and then try to eventually move towards a change in the ordinance, potentially if that is a wish of council, depending on what other ordinance you see or language you like, or just, again, if you want a restriction or not. And so that was just kind of the precursor to this discussion, just to get you information. I think we've gotten that for you to review. And so we'll turn it over to council.
yeah, we haven't even discussed it. I'm curious as anything is what you're all thinking. So let's just have an open discussion. Any reflections? We've all been hearing, but
Yeah, I think I was maybe the first to bring it up back in May or April when after the law had been changed.
That's correct. This is your fault. It's on here. So.
But again,
you're elevated, just barely.
This is kind of what I was also looking forward to see what else was out there, because you were hearing Waterloo's going to do this, Cedar Falls is going to do this, Des Moines is going to do this, Waukee. You just hear the different stories of different cities. So okay, how are we going to approach it? And taking along kind of the wait and see look, and it looks like quite a few cities tended to look at, let's let it play out this year and see what happens. And Chief didn't really report a lot of incidents with that, so for this summer. So at this point, I think I'm probably still comfortable riding it out and kind of following what the state guidelines are, and until we start to notice a problem or notice a lot of complaints from citizens saying, hey, we need to take a look at this and do something about it. I think right now it's probably good to stick with it.
Maybe I received some emails Tim, that you didn't?
I received a couple that were on there, but it was not
Yeah.
what I was expecting. A lot more concern, a lot more comments of it, and frankly, I was also thinking that there might be a lot more issues with it, whether from the chief reporting, people calling in, but it didn't seem to be that was the case.
Maybe I had a few more, but it wasn't an onslaught either. But what I did hear was the problem with pets, because there's so many pets in Waverly right now. Thank you, Tab, for giving us this park, which promoted all these pets that now are upset because we have this. So we had the pet issues.
You have a chick.
But we also had children issues. Just sleep patterns were heavily challenged. There's maybe 7 emails that I got that were totally outraged by the noise, and both how far into the night it went, and then some that went beyond even the time that was allotted. I didn't get any support but support people wouldn't weigh in necessarily. They just would keep going. So I throw that into the hopper.
I wonder how, just as a summary, how long is the sale? And can we gauge how long was the sale, and maybe how long were people setting these off? How long did that last?
The sale and use was June 1st to July 8th. So you could both sell and set them off in that time period.
Okay.
throughout the summer.
Okay. Because I didn't, I'm kind of with Tim. I didn't witness an issue. We saw there's a couple emails sent to council. So to me, it wasn't that large of an issue, and I kind of try to put it in perspective of other events that go on. We have the county fair, and which is a week of celebration. We have other events, and so I just kind of wanted to gauge how long this lasted compared to others. I get significant questions about airport noise and traffic and stuff, and so I wonder if this is in the same bucket. That's something to take a look at as well. So, but I guess I'm with Tim. I would rather I didn't see a lot of issue and didn't see it abused. So, and I probably get more complaints about other events.
I guess I'd like to, oh, go ahead, Dan.
I think, I think you get the most complaints out of the class 1, the aerial shells and bottle rockets, something that makes more noise than just the sparkling fountains. I don't know if there's any regulation. I think it would have to be with it concerning those as far as limiting time. But I mean, I didn't notice a huge amount of problem. It was kind of late, I think. The first night of the 4th of July weekend, I think there was one on quite a way until 11 o'clock or so. But
Yeah, I was just going to say, I wonder if there isn't a little bit of a middle ground. I'd have to go back and look at how many emails and phone calls I got. I got more than just a handful, I know that. What became clear to me is that some of what you've already mentioned, people with pets, children, young children especially, vets, and some senior citizens were among the mix that called me and had very different concerns based on who they were and what they were experiencing. But we're concerned, I would say, about, I think I only had one person advocate for a ban, but I think quite a few people said things like, does it really have to be this long? June 1st to July 8th. If we knew that, so there's an expectation, if we know it's going to be for 3 or 4 days and we know only until 10 o'clock at night, then I probably wouldn't jump out of my, this was a senior citizen, this particular scenario, I wouldn't, jump out of my sleep or out of my bed every night if I knew it was just a limited time. But when you don't know when it's coming, when you've got 4 or 5 weeks and then go off anytime, then that's different than limiting it and allowing fireworks to be set off during that time. So I'm just wondering if there isn't a middle ground that both, allows folks to have fun with fireworks with the new state law, but also maybe allows those people who are bothered by it for different reasons to at least have a shorter window where they know to expect that and can deal with it better, perhaps. That would be my suggestion.
Yeah. Thank you.
I would just second the idea that the two things that concern me most is the length of the period, June 1 to July 8th. I mean, really? To celebrate the 4th of July? What do we need to do on June 1 or June 15 that has any relation to expressing ourselves in regards to, the 4th of July type of things? And then the curfew. I think it's in the summer. It's got to be dark. So I think 10 o'clock, you got to kind of give them that. But those are two things that I would look at, is to see what kind of use is happening outside of the proximity to the holiday. The Courier has an editorial tonight in the paper and expressing that thought that seems like maybe the length of time is excessive. But it's been, it's just been my experience all through the years with fireworks, wherever I've encountered it. Here in Iowa or wherever else I've been, I think that they're a concern. I mean, I think that the higher power stuff is dangerous. It is a concern, and I don't think we're very responsible about our supervision of kids and things of that kind. The few things I did see, I didn't see a lot of incidences, but I did see a few, and that's what I saw. I saw kids way too young just tossing around these fireworks, and then in another situation in a residential area, people tossing them off their deck, on which is their gas grill, and hitting throwing them into trees where they could I just don't think we're very careful about. I don't think we're very well instructed about it. I don't think we're aware of the power that some of this stuff has, and I think it behooves us as a community to encourage responsible use. And I think the violations of the curfew or uses that are outside the realm of like legitimately celebrating the events that they're supposed to be brought up in connection with, I think those are things to pay attention to. And I don't know that we have to do something right now, but as time goes on, I think it just behooves us to encourage responsible use of these things at appropriate hours, considering the animals, the people that might be affected more so than a normal person would be. I think there's room to give that plenty of thought.
Thank you, Steve.
Mayor?
I agree with that, and I think I like that concept, but I guess Steve might appreciate this. I'm more of the idea of prior restraint. I would rather allow a little leeway first and see how they do, and that's kind of what I was looking for this summer, was to see. I was a little concerned, what were we looking at, how were we prepared for it, but then kind of give them room, and if it does become a problem, then we can rein them back in. I mean, we reined them in for 70 years or whatever in the state because of an accident in Spencer, essentially, from the history of it, and so the whole state went dry on it, but then, it's opening back up, and I guess it is kind of a, let's see, if they are responsible with it, and if they're not, then yeah.
I think that I don't have any real problem with that approach. I just think there's some things to keep an eye on.
Rich had a comment he wanted.
Sorry, I jumped in on you.
No, you're fine. I was just gonna, since this is sharing information, I think one of the things that is just getting the information out. I don't have a recommendation, but just to know this, the state restricts the age for selling them for the age of 18 or older. There is no restriction on age for use. So if that was something, as if you want to look at something for an ordinance, that would be something you'd have to write in that's contrary to the state or in addition to the state.
I guess I took an opportunity to work the fireworks tent that Heritage Days and Oktoberfest had, and it was somewhat out of just curiosity. It was just to help those two organizations, but unscientific. I'd say about a quarter to a third of the folks that I interacted with a couple of times I were there indicated this was the first time they've ever bought it, that they were first time they were going to go shoot it. I think it was just a novelty. They wanted to go out and do it. I certainly had reservations of it being on the fire department and knowing when we set up the city's fireworks, some of the regulations as far as distance from buildings, that type of thing. And it was a little unnerving to drive through town and see some of the bigger, higher aerial ones being shot off in very close proximity to buildings, trees, those type of things. But when it comes right down to it, the folks that contacted me, I thanked them for their input, but I told them, please contact your state representatives. I really hate to see the state do something and then say, oh, if you don't like it, have the cities do what they want. To me, that just sends kind of a mixed message. But the two things that I kind of walked away with was, which Rich said, I think we can regulate who uses them and sets them off. And the other is, yes, I think people just got tired in the length of time that they were going off. If we shorten that down to a couple weeks, didn't prohibit different things so that we stay pretty consistent with the state as far as what they can shoot off, but just limit the number of times they can shoot it off, I think that would help with those folks that just got tired of it by the end of the 4th of July weekend.
And I would consider the people who reached out to me being enough of a sample of the town that I think we have to do something. I don't see any need for expanded time. I can see 3, 4, 5 days most. I think these families that might be next to a home where there's pretty excited explosions going on and their children can't sleep for 3, 4, 5 days, they can live with it maybe. But if it goes on eclectically or it goes on consecutively over that time and it affects the quality of life for these children next to homes that are into fireworks, I think we need some structure. So I throw that in to represent not only my own thoughts, but what's come to me.
I guess I didn't buy any. I'd just be curious. Dan, the tent you worked at and sold the fireworks, did they sell the aerial stuff that people were concerned about?
Yeah, they had the full selection. Just, I mean, whatever the state allowed was the selection they had. And again, a lot of them that I saw, they tended to be towards the lower end. The Roman candle type things, the more fountain type things. But yeah, they were certainly buying anything and everything.
Isn't the state curfew, I'm trying to remember, it's 10 o'clock, right, and 11 o'clock on the 4th
Saturdays.
itself, correct?
No,
And
it's
10 o'clock the other nights?
10 o'clock, and then the Saturdays, Friday and Saturdays before and after are allowed to go to 11.
Yeah, okay, Friday and Saturday,
Yeah.
before and after, okay.
The other thing I forgot to mention was I always hesitate too to put rules out there that then Rich and his staff have to try to enforce. And I just know, how do you do that? By the time you get across town to respond to a complaint, they could be done with the fireworks, whatever. So if we do something, it has to be workable for the police force to enforce. And then there's the communication to the community so that they understand it. And
I'm just going to throw an idea out there from my perspective. I mean, what if I mean, I wasn't even thinking about the age restriction, but I like that idea, whoever brought that up. And then in addition to that, I mean, if you had 2 days before and 2 days after, that's 5, that's 5 days. And that would also, I think that allows for easier enforcement, because you've got a set period of time. I mean, well, I suppose you could still have them go off outside of that time period, and you'd be goose chasing. But I don't know.
I guess how does that impact the sale? I guess we're probably benefiting from the revenue of the sale, and then we're trying to regulate it. I guess it kind of gets.
Well, one thing I thought of was, you can still shoot them off. You just can't shoot them off in town, on those days. You can still go out in the country, or, this would be a city ordinance, right? So it's not saying you can't do it anywhere in the state. You can go to another town that allows it, or that might be nearby, or you can go out in the country. We would just be saying for our Waverly citizens, this is what we're...
Bill, just one question kind of on that. As far as neighbors shooting off fireworks, would that fall under the same kind of like noise restrictions or things that could be if somebody was playing loud music or having a big party at a house next door? Does that fall within that same, that a neighbor could complain and say, hey, this is going on night after night? That obviously we would prefer the neighbors to get together and talk and be neighborly about things, but if there was a complaint that dealt with, would that fall under that purview?
It's hard to say because they've obviously let you do it. The state law says you can do that. You can set off fireworks. It doesn't say unless they're too loud. And if you're playing music, that's legal to do too.
But if they're outside of the time zone, time
right.
allotment, if they're after
right.
10 o'clock.
But if they're up to 10 o'clock and they're just doing it really continuously, it could be really annoying and very difficult. But what are you going to charge them for because they're doing it legally? Now, the question is, a stereo is legal too, but when you turn it up too high, it becomes unreasonable. And the question is it unreasonable if you have 100 things going off in a row? That might be unreasonable. So it's...
Because I kind of advise people, it's like, and this is before it started, it's like, well, I guess, they asked, what are we going to do? And I said, well, we've probably got ordinances in place. Maybe that was the wrong advice. I assumed if you've got a loud car, cars are legal, but if you're a nuisance with it, would that be the same?
But the normal use of a rocket or a firecracker causes the same sound, unless it's repetitious. I would think more of the repetition of it, but the just exploding a firework is really what it's intended to be, and it's being made legal by the state. So it really would be how much more you're doing if you're doing it 5 feet away from your neighbor's windows, intentionally or something. Really, it's kind of one of those things where you have to kind of judge what's happening. But we don't like to do that when it comes to law.
Well, you mentioned it's the word reasonable, and so if they were outside the time limit or the time restriction, it would already be a violation. Example I always try to give, that I usually give when I describe how officers will have to determine what's reasonable, is what activity is being done and what's reasonable for that. One night I made 2 citizens very angry on the exact same call, and which is hard to do, but I was able to accomplish that. And so there was a movie release, and there was a long line of folks outside in front of Palace Theater, and there had to have been 100 people out there waiting. And there was in the apartment complex, the upper story, somebody called in and complained about the noise. And I said, it's not unreasonable to live in a downtown district across from a movie theater and have noise. And so they were upset because we didn't keep the crowd quiet, and they were just visiting. So then about a half an hour later, our local radio station showed up and then put the van out there and turned the speakers on and then played music. So then we went to the theater, said you need to shut that off because that's beyond what would be reasonable and expectation to the neighborhood. So we made both parties angry at us, but that's just kind of how we have to go through what's reasonable. I don't know if that did anything good or not, but it's a good story. Yeah.
And I know I have an example of our cabin in Clayton. There's people across the street. It's 25 feet across the street to the house, and they would line up 25 pipes to set them off like you would. And they were set it off. They set them off for like 45 minutes to an hour in a. Just one right after another, and with very few breaks
Until they were out.
That sounds pretty. That's pretty unreasonable at times.
Very expensive.
Yeah. It's also it litters a lot. So people were really complaining too that I hadn't heard tonight about how much debris got deposited in different places. So.
A lot of the communities are banning also because of the children and the pets and just what it does to the rhythm of a community. So there is a whole consideration. I think that the mood here is to allow, but hopefully to restrict.
Well, along that line, sir, I know a lot of cities, when they've talked about that, you can't restrict the sale of these items. You can restrict the usage, but not the sale. So the revenue, the sales should not suffer if there is a restriction, because again, they can purchase for the entire time period it's open. As
And
legal
go
by the
outside the
state.
limits, yeah.
It's just when you shoot them off, or what the cities are limiting the time frame to shoot them off.
I want to be careful about that too. You don't want to buy them, and then we're kind of talking about going outside the limits. So you go out and buy it and go into a nice dry pasture that you don't own. And that's I don't want to send the wrong message here.
No.
Well, and the law says
You
it
can
has
go
to be on
someplace else
your
on your
property.
Or you'd have to be on
Or
your-
property
Yeah.
you have permission on,
Yeah.
and that's the law as well,
Yeah.
your
We can
property.
insert the legal terms that I should be
That's
using
the
here,
way.
but
Yeah.
for the police.
But that's some of the
Good
issue
point,
others had
yeah.
wrestled with, is the revenue a hit, and yet
Yeah.
it can still be sold, is only limited when you can actually set them off, and that's where you're seeing.
No, that's
some
a good point.
ordinances.
Did we cause people to get license for the 2 tents that were sent up, or did they just have to get the
No, they were-
state license?
It's on private property.
No, the 2 tents that were up for sale, yeah, they had to go through the state fire marshal.
The state.
Did we as a city
As a
then-
city, we did not.
We-
State gives the permit.
The city
as a
does
city,
not
no.
require one at this time, only if for peddlers or transient, you go door to door. If you have private property owner permission, you can pretty much do it
And I
anywhere,
didn't see an issue, but as it grows, that may be something we want to look at, to
as long as
make
it's
sure
zoned.
that
Inspection
don't have
fees or.
somebody
There's some
selling it
court
out of a
cases
van on
about
the corner
restricting
type thing.
the sale, whether they can restrict them into certain zones, that kind of thing. And there's a lot of cases there's some cases that are being decided on those issues, so.
I think it's helpful for all of us to kind of grow into this as we hear each other. It's helpful for me just to hear everybody's opinion. Obviously, we're going to have this come back, and we're going to have the city grapple with the first round in that. Having heard everything, let's go, Dan. Anything more we want to add to coaching to our city?
Yeah, again, I'm going to be curious to see what happens in December.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of families get together for Christmas parties, gatherings, and
New
their
Year's.
neighbors are shooting off fireworks leading up to the year-end celebration. That could,
What are the dates for the holidays?
It's December 31st to January 1st.
Yeah, just one day.
they can buy them, but they can't set them off before the 31st? Is that correct, Rich?
Yeah.
Mm,
And
that's
actually,
not-
I'm sorry, it's December 3rd to January.
Through January 1st,
3rd,
3rd.
3rd to 3rd. It's a month.
Okay.
Is it?
They can buy, but then I was thinking they could set them off prior to.
I got
10th. Looking at the Senate file right now, it's December 10 to January.
December 10th through
Yeah.
January 3rd.
So again, I would just encourage folks, if they do go out and brave the winter, to be courteous to their neighbors and understand that they may not be celebrating a different holiday than one where you want a lot of noise going off. And
Do you remember when we talked about the bow situation?
The what?
Bow and arrow
Oh, yeah, bow and
situation.
arrow.
We determined that it was legal, but to be respectful of neighbors. I kind of see it like this: if I'm living right next to a house, I'm not going to line up Roman candles, but it's probably an issue of character. Where bows, we kind of decided the same thing: is you had to do it safe, you couldn't point it towards a neighbor's house, all those types of things. And that gets complicated. It leaves a whole lot of open area, because I think that an issue is if you're in an area where a lot of people are doing it at the same place, or houses are closer, I can see that being an issue. I kind of compare it to the discussion we had with bow and arrow too.
We looked at that too, Dave, and that's how we talked a lot about it, is our throwing and shooting ordinance. And so everybody that talked about having debris landing on their property would be outside of that. And so we could enforce something like that at this point, because if the wind direction is wrong, I mean, you can hear it dropping on other homes, or even the cardboard coming from one of the shots. So if you can't contain it, then you probably shouldn't be using it on your property.
Yeah.
I did have a couple people suggest to me, maybe we model something after our leaf burning where you have to have a lot size of a certain size before you can set them off.
Yeah.
Again, that gets, how do you enforce it?
Doesn't really matter for the noise so much, I don't think.
Yeah,
It was more the debris
Yeah.
when they called
Yeah.
and said that their neighbor was shooting them off and all the debris was in their backyard
Yeah.
type thing.
I noticed they had, one of the ordinances had when there's a ban on open burning, you can't use fireworks. Just to kind of go along with that aspect.
Final coaching, Tim, to city.
No, I'm on the kind of wait and see approach at this point. I mean, I thought, maybe looking at, because some of the cities were talking about banning it from public parks and things like that as a possibility, and those are all options that are on the table, but I guess, as I've said, I'm more along the lines of let's see before somebody does something, see if people start to do dumb things with it. And then we can,
And I think the
address
law
that.
does carry to some of that. You have to have permission, property you own or permission you're granted to have on that property, which would eliminate public ground. So unless we gave explicit permission to be on public ground, it is prohibited.
Yeah, and that's where I thought some of these others, and certainly I would think the litter or the debris would fall under some of our other ordinances or things where people could say, hey, you shut them off, but now you've caused this issue and you've got to deal with it, because that's part of, people will say it's a right, but it actually is a privilege to shoot fireworks off.
Thank you.
On the timing of it, I would just react to that and say, why not pursue both? I mean, why not start to look at, where we might find some common ground on council or what we hear from citizens in the meantime after this discussion and study session tonight. And at the same time, wait and see what happens in December. I don't see why those can't be, kind of pursued at the same time. And my hope would be that maybe then we would prevent something more extreme happening rather than waiting for something terrible to happen. That might be worse than just being irritated by noise.
Okay. Dan, would it be?
I think it would be interesting to see what happens in December, because it's not, to me, I guess it's not a holiday that I normally associate with fireworks.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Not here, but in Europe it is.
Yeah, in the South
big
and
time.
right, Chicago.
Potential for
It's
a lot
parts
more
of the
complaints
nation is big.
in December, around Christmas, that kind of thing, when people want to be quiet and spend time with their families. It's not the picnic outside atmosphere. I think
I think you're right.
it'll be
around
interesting
here,
to see
yeah.
what happens. Will there be a lot of it going on? And if there is, how much people are going to take offense to it?
Thank you. And you already know where I'm weighing in. I think that's already a minor issue. And it's
Still-
major for some people. And
Yeah.
I think we have to think of keeping structure going here. But that's just my 3 cents. It's no different than yours. We're just weighing in.
One of the things that just to kind of, and my comments were, I had significantly more concern about airport noise, or the planes going over low. So I think if we're going to address this type of noise, I think we should address others as well, and so that it might turn into a slippery slope. But I had a neighbor move because of he was a veteran and couldn't take it anymore. So so I think we need to spend as much time on that issue as we do with this.
Okay, those are your kind of marching orders to the city. A little clear as mud. But we do thank everyone for weighing in on this, and we thank the public for weighing in with their council people. And this is democracy at work. Last comments before I move on. Board of Adjustments gave us their minutes for May 8th. Any comments?
I'd say the one issue was the July one, Pete, where they had the parking lot, kind of that the city code calls for parking lots to be paved. And they came for a variance because they were a lot that was set back off of Bremer Avenue and had some businesses in front of them, but according to code, they would have had to pave their entire lot while people coming into them would still be coming across on gravel in the existing businesses there. So it might be one of those, I don't know if it's just something to be handled on a hardship or case-by-case basis, or something to maybe look at in code as to how that's set up in those situations. Pete, did I explain that well enough, or let you kind of?
Hey, you hit it with a bucket of something anyway. I did have some conversation with Bill.
This is Pete Lampy for the
afterwards
public,
on that.
head of Board of Adjustments. Go ahead.
The issue was hard surfacing for all parking lots and things with commercial businesses. It was in an existing area, this particular case that we looked at, and we gave a variance, but with a little restriction. They had to do some aprons on the outside of the building. One of the things we looked at was the fact that they were going to have to drive across an entire lot of gravel to get to their parking lot. I talked with Bill about it afterwards, and we're kind of somewhat on the same page, and I think we all want to look at it that at a certain point, yes, it has to start going back and getting filled. We've also got some references that were done during the hearing on this case of there was word of mouth from a builder that's like, okay, we're going to put up these buildings. Yeah, I'm going to hard surface it. Well, the buildings have been up for 3 years and it's never been hard surfaced. Well, there's an enforcement policy problem that we've got to figure out how to deal with that. And I think that's one of the things that's kind of in-house that needs to be dealt with and then brought to the council for discussion on those.
Kind of looking at both the July 10th and the May 8th Board of Adjustments minutes. Any other comments on either set? Officially received staff comments.
I don't believe we have any, sir. Thank you.
That's quiet again, like 2 straight meetings.
City Council comments. Let's revert. Edie, Dan, David.
I don't have any, thank you.
David.
I just received some questions about the dry run. I think the old dry run, we talked about maintenance. The new dry run, the weeds are getting tall in some areas. There's probably a plan around that or something, or?
Somebody's waiting for it to get mowed.
I'm sure they are.
Yeah.
The wildflowers that are, these aren't wildflowers.
Yeah.
There's some areas that came in very well, and the flowers came in as we wanted to, and others did not. I know we've kind of talked briefly, I don't know if you want to touch on it, Mike, as far as how we're going to proceed going forward, but there's some areas that may have to be reseeded, retaken care of, so I think we're aware, it's just a matter of getting to that
Mike and
point
I
in
have
time.
touched base on that.
What's that?
We've touched base on reseeding.
Oh, okay.
As with all the dots up there, there's vegetation management plans that need to be put together for every single one of them. The Dry Run Creek was never intended to be a no maintenance. It was intended to be lower maintenance with the use of native grasses and flowers. The area north of Bremer Avenue is doing pretty well. The area south of Bremer Avenue is probably going to need to have some reseeding done.
Okay. Was the concern, David, over the height?
Yeah, I just, people are sending me pictures.
No, I understand that.
Of stuff, and
I understand.
Wondered if, sometimes the people are initially kind of negative, and I wanted to have a good answer.
Yeah.
I got a picture of a dead coon in the bottom and stuff, and that's going to happen. But I don't want to focus on that. But it just, I guess I wanted to answer back that I'm sure it's probably in process, and it's the first year. And
Does it grow higher the first year and then level out, not quite so high, or does it always stay at that high level?
Well, again, I think the area north of Bremer Avenue is going to be, I think, very typical of what it's going to be. We will mow it in October, but a lot of these, the flowers need to be able to reseed themselves.
Oh, that's good.
Going forward, we'd like to see a greater variety and greater color of flowers in there. So, you've got purple cone flowers and stuff. You can grab the seed heads and go out with a spade and add to it. So.
Okay, so that's the message I guess we can send is, hey, just be patient, they're gonna take care of it, and
Yeah,
hopefully.
it takes time to reestablish, reseed, kind of get rid of the stuff that shouldn't be in there. It just takes time. And some areas took much better than the others we talked about.
Yeah.
And some are going to take more extensive seeding, whether it was water issues or soil, but we'll have to get to that. So if they can be patient, it will look better next year.
Thank you. Ken?
Just got an email tonight talking about the street closure with Bremer and some of the redirecting of traffic, particularly local going on, using Second Avenue a lot more, and concern about students walking to school, crossing the street on Second Avenue or along Second Avenue. Just thought maybe Rich and have them keep an eye on that, see if we need to move some of those crosswalk signs, just to kind of alert drivers or try to raise awareness of that, communicate with the school and see if there are any issues with that during those times. I mean, obviously, we're going to have a lot of traffic going through there for a few weeks, months.
Yeah.
So just kind of an awareness of both the traffic pattern, but also that we've got pedestrians that we want to watch out for as well.
Mr. Dan?
Yeah, traveling, being on the east end of town and having to travel Main Street to get to work, I've been able to turn down the volume of my radio about 4 steps. Once you get on the west part of that, it's nice and smooth, and folks will just be patient. We're getting there, and it's well worth the wait. And
Good word. Steve?
Nothing, just thanks again for letting me sit in.
Yeah. Completed a wonderful month of ending with good discussion. No mayoral comments. Motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
Second. All in favor signify with yes.
yes.
Yes.